Welcome to the Conservation Is podcast, a Conservation Chat UK production. This is the place where we start the conversation about all things conservation and share them with our listeners. You can join in and interact with us using the hashtag ConservationIs and the hashtag ConservationChatUK. Let's start the conversation. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Conservation Is podcast. I'm back again with Steph, and we're in the garden, so if you can hear lots of wind, that's why. And Cracker's also with us, so if you hear lots of meowing, that's him, because he's attention seeking all day long. But we decided we wanted to do this podcast in the garden because the topic that we're going to discuss today is mental health. So it's Mental Health Week, Mental Health Awareness Week this week, but it's also Biodiversity Day today. So we thought we're going to marry up the two in one podcast, sit in the garden and talk about how biodiversity, wildlife and nature helps our mental health and can help yours if we've got any tips or whatever. So first of all, I guess, Steph, why does nature help your mental health and why?
First of all, it definitely does. I feel like there's so many reasons why. The main one would be, I guess, it just feels right. I know that sounds really like hippie and like airy fairy, but it really does. So like, you can be stuck inside or stuck at work on a computer all day, and the minute you go outside, you just feel, I guess, like connected to the earth, and it's natural, isn't it? Like that's where you're supposed to be.
It feels to me like, because I feel like I'm a naturally stressed person. I feel like I feel emotions so deeply and so like to the surface all the time, and I get stressed very easily. Like highly sensitive person, I call myself. But when I feel like that, and then I plant my feet on the ground like we're doing now, or like I take my shoes off on the beach, I feel like I've been purified.
Yeah.
That's like the best word I can use to really describe it. Is like I feel like all of the toxins are just immediately drawn out of my cells.
Yeah.
Woo!
Massive gust of wind.
Yeah, it's really, really windy today. I think maybe there might be a storm brewing. But so I discovered a documentary the other day, and I've watched it twice in the space of like 3 days, and Steph just watched it with me, and it's called Earthing Movie, I think it was called.
Yeah.
I'll leave a link to it because it's on YouTube. I'll leave a link in the description box below so you can go and watch it yourself. But it's all about how grounding yourself and earthing yourself can vastly improve your health and reduce inflammation. So that's like a physical health thing. But I feel like when your physical health isn't on par and isn't at a very good state, it's detrimental to your mental health, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've been suffering with all sorts of aches and pains, like chronic pain and fatigue for a few years now. So I found this documentary really exciting. So I guess I should just describe what grounding is really. And it's the process of having your body touching the earth directly. So taking your shoes off on the beach or in the garden, like it has to be like nature. So ocean, sand, mud, earth, tree bark, like anything that's directly connected to the earth and is natural will neutralize your bodily electricity, because apparently we're all made of energy and we're all electrical beings, so it makes sense that we'd need to earth ourselves, kind of like a wire. We all know that wires in electrical equipment have an earth wire, don't they, to stop them from blowing up and stuff. So I guess to stop us from blowing up, we need to ground ourselves. Mm-hmm. But I've got some like facts about it because I just found it so fascinating. This is like the scientific-y stuff, and then we can kind of talk about like, I suppose it just feeds into the mental health side of things. So we basically absorb a tremendous amount of radiation from our electrical devices, and we all spend so much time with electrical devices, don't we? Like my mobile phone lives in my pocket or my hand. Like I'm never separated from it. We're recording this podcast on my phone right now. Like it's very, very rare that I'm not without this companion, like electrical companion. And then we spent, like most of us work in office environments surrounded by modems and computer equipment. And then there's just general Wi-Fi everywhere, isn't there? Like these radiation of Wi-Fi everywhere we go. So we kind of get charged with the wrong kind of energy, and apparently some people can have as many as 20 volts of electricity in their body, and it can be really bad for your health. Basically, the Earth has negative charge, so the moment that we place our feet onto the Earth, the negative charge neutralizes any positive charge that we've absorbed throughout the day using electrical equipment. And it is as simple as taking your shoes off and planting your feet on some grass. Like, it doesn't have to be tremendously, like, it's free. Like, it's free, it's easy, So that's just a little bit of facts about it. I guess what I'm trying to say with this whole grounding thing is that nature not only helps us, like, mentally, it can majorly help us on a physical level. And then when both things are working, you'll be fine. Like, I feel like life is just so much more tolerable when you feel okay. Do you know of anything, Steph, like fact-wise, that about like how nature helps mental health? I know that I've heard even looking at something that's green can drastically improve like your outlook or your attitude for the day.
I think it's been proven that if you just look at images of nature, so if you've got like wildflower backgrounds, or it sounds really silly, but any kind of natural image can actually like improve your mood, and there's like a lot of evidence coming forward for that at the moment, especially so like literally anything from just one tiny walk a day where you walk through a park, things like that can all actually have a positive effect on your mental health.
I think the importance of windows as well. I feel terrible for people who, like, they maybe live in their dream life and work in their dream job, but they're in like one of these horrible offices in the middle of a building with no windows. And I think I would just, like, the depression would get too much. I feel like just having a window to look out of can like be such a massive boost for your morale.
I think the natural light is just so helpful, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think like also at the end of the day, like, we're primates. As much as we like to think that we're separate from nature and wildlife, or some of us do, we are primates and we're diurnal beings, and like we are triggered by times of day and light and seasons. I mean, we're in the UK, so we've got these seasons. But I notice, like, every year during winter when there's not very much sunlight and I can't go out as much because it's just too cold, like it's unbearable sometimes, and I can't go on the beach and take my shoes off. I can just walk around with a coat on, and you're layered and layered and layered in clothing and like wearing big thick boots and stuff. I am my most depressed in winter. Like, this is kind of a common thing with people, isn't it, in the kind of northern hemisphere. We get so little sunlight for half of the year that we're all kind of, by March, we're all kind of like at the end of our tethers.
Severely deficient as well.
Yeah, deficient in nature for 6 months of the year. I mean, that's why like I dreamed of like spending because I've done this a few times, like backpacking, spending 6 months on the equator where time stands still, basically. It's just hot and gorgeous all the time, and you do get some weird weather, but at least it's like sunny every day and it's warm and comfortable, and you can go out in nature, because even if you get wet, you know you'll dry off in a few minutes.
I think as well, you were saying a minute ago that we're so disconnected to nature, with like many people work in offices, like you were saying, and I think that it's no wonder that we've got this almost like mental health pandemic in a way. It's no wonder, because we do everything that we can as a society to like push ourselves away from the natural point that we've come from. Like, we are, like you were saying, like primates, like we should be in nature. That's where we evolved from. So, and at the moment we've got to this point where everything that we're doing is like in this superficial world, and it's all about technology, which is great in one way, but we're missing out on like the basics of what we need.
Like we've built on top of our foundation to such a height that we can't see it anymore. And I just think I just talking then again about being primates and things, and I'm just thinking like we're great apes, where, you know, our closest relatives are chimpanzees, bonobo monkeys, gorillas and orangutans. And orangutans are probably the only ones that are really arboreal. They spend a lot of time in trees, above ground. Like, they've only got tiny little legs, they can't really walk that far. like, you know, they swing, like trees are their thing. Then I'm thinking like gorillas and chimpanzees and bonobos especially spend just all their time rolling around on the ground in plant matter, in their little family groups and stuff. And I just think like, what, like I'm not anti-technology, because technology allows us to do this podcast. Technology allows us to share Facebook messages and all the cool stuff that technology does. Like, I'm not disputing that's amazing, and I'm so grateful for technology, but I think it's important for us to remember that it's not necessarily beneficial to our health. It's beneficial to our lives, like our businesses, our connection with others in like a vast world where everybody kind of lives all over the place. But when it comes to essential like basics to keep yourself healthy mentally and physically, I think nature has just been totally swept under the rug.
Yeah, and actually, like you're saying, with things that keep us alive, technology is really not, I mean, we can live without that, but we can't live without nature and what it produces for us.
So I suppose what I'd say to our listeners is, like, if you're feeling low and you don't know why, you can't put your finger on it, because I know I did for a long time, and I was like, why do I feel so depressed all the time? I'm not generally I'm an anxious person. I think it's like natural to be anxious in a world that we live in right now, but depression's not really something that I ever had to deal with on such a substantial scale. And I got into a really horrible place last year, and I think it was because I needed that supplement of nature, and I'm someone who spends a lot of time in nature, but it's just I wasn't in it enough, and I wasn't connected to it enough. So I would say to our listeners, I challenge you to give nature a go. If you're not that way inclined, you're probably not listening, but I can basically guarantee that everyone that listens to this podcast cares about nature to some extent. But just give it, like, see it as a daily supplement, like you would take a vitamin D capsule or a magnesium capsule. Like, see it as your supplement for the day, and just go out into your garden if you're lucky enough to have one, or walk down to the beach, or your nearest and most convenient patch of nature, even if it's like the tiniest little like play park with a patch of green in the corner, or I don't know, a plant pot. Just like crawl inside your plant pot.
Sit inside a plant pot.
But just 10 minutes. Because I read some articles saying that just 10 to 20 minutes stood on the earth can drastically affect. It can reduce like physical inflammation, but it can also just bring this kind of sense of being alive. Yeah. Again, like reignite your cells and make you feel vibrant again. I know I do now. We've literally just come out here. We've been, as long as we've been recording this podcast, I feel probably like 90% better than I did when I sat inside the house just now. Such a simple thing to do.
I think as well, on the documentary, there was a man on there that said that he spends 95% of his day like trying to be grounded, and I think that just shows, I know not everyone might be able to hit that target of being that much, you know, that connected, but it just shows how unbalanced we all are, really. Like we should be spending the majority of our time connected to this natural source instead of the other way round. So I think that's a really key thing.
But also, like, so many of our Western medicines were derived from, like, the Amazon rainforest. Like, places of nature, places of wild biodiversity. A lot of our medicines come from there, so, like, it is just getting connected again, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just know from a personal point of view how much nature helps me. Like, going for a walk and just breathing in the fresh air, listening to the birds. I think that's another thing with mental health, especially with anxiety, when you're fearing the future or you're nervous about the future and like dreading what hasn't happened yet. Because that's basically a really basic explanation of what anxiety is. When you can just take a moment to feel something, smell something, see something and hear something, that really brings you back to the present and stops you in that moment from worrying about the thing that hasn't happened yet, or the thing that you're, you know, predicting to happen. Because we all do a lot of predicting, and like 9 times out of 10 it doesn't come true. I know that's like, it's one of my most chronic conditions, is trying to predict the future all the time. But then I take myself, I think I talked about this in our last podcast where you interviewed me, and it was genuinely this time last week. It was, you know, exactly a year ago that this happened.
Yeah.
I was studying for my final exams. I had 2 final exams for my entire university course, and then it was over. And I was tearing my hair out. Like, I was exhausted, I had burnout, like my body wasn't working properly anymore, could barely get myself out of bed. I just felt low, like what's the point anymore? Like, I was at my worst, I would say, that I can ever remember being at. Like, I felt like a shell of a human being. Because I've just been spending hours, like countless hours, I can't even tell you, probably millions of hours, like sat in front of a computer,
staring at a screen,
and just like, and yeah, I'm reading about nature, but I'm not enjoying it because I'm doing it on a computer. But anyway, I was at that point where I was like, I know the only thing that can help me now is nature.
Yeah.
I genuinely couldn't think of anything else. So I was like, that is the thing that's going to help me. So me and Stu walked down to the local beach, and I took my shoes off, and I buried my feet into the sand up to my ankles, and I just stood it was like in the water as well, in the sea, so I had the benefit of 2 elements. I had water and earth. And literally 2 minutes later I was like, I feel like I can cope now, I'm going to pass my exams now, like I can do this. And I did. But if I had carried on just in my little box room typing away and like pushing through, I don't think I'd be where I am now. I think I probably would have flunked it in the end. So I couldn't physically do it.
Yeah.
And I remember one day laying in this exact spot in the garden on my front with a book in front of me, just like praying it would go in, but just being connected to the earth and being outside made it more tolerable to do that, like bit of extra revision before it was too late kind of thing.
I think personally as well, I always feel like when I'm outside, I'm a really, really anxious person anyway. So when I'm outside, I always feel less anxious. Like, I can't really explain it. I just feel like I can breathe properly outside. Whereas if I'm in and there's like a really intense event, like I've got an interview or got to do a presentation and I'm inside, I just feel like I actually struggle to breathe sometimes, which sounds really dramatic. But if I'm outside, or if I can get a breather and just get my breath back, I just feel like being anywhere outside just is so soothing, for especially if you're like really anxious and panicky.
Yeah, it is just the best. I can never think of the right words when we do this podcast.
Yeah,
like the best describing words.
I guess you are kind of more free in a way. You're literally not trapped between 4 walls.
Yeah, I mean, you don't like in the wild, like animals in the wild, biodiversity, you don't really see horrible illnesses like cancer. You don't really like see animals suffering with depression in the wild, because they're fully connected to nature, like they should be. But then you bring, say, animals into captivity, you do see animals suffering with these kind of mental health issues. We call it stereotypical behaviour in that animal science world. And that's where they develop coping mechanisms for anxiety, basically, or depression, because they're not necessarily, I mean, zookeepers, I'm sure, do their best whenever, however they can. But I just think, on a human standpoint, and from an animal standpoint, and just generally, as nature as a whole, like, we're all supposed to be connected to each other. It's just too perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, who says that some concrete's better for us? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, some electrical wires, some really dangerous radiation, and concrete walls are supposedly better for us than the great outdoors, the vibrant colours, the oxygen, the wind, the rain, the sun.
Just the energy of it, I guess.
Like, seasonal affective disorder says a lot, doesn't it? Not getting enough sunlight will make you depressed, because vitamin D is directly responsible for your mental health and how like happy you feel. Yeah, I feel like sometimes it's hard for people to do the most simple thing, don't you think? Like, sometimes I just really wish that more doctors would be like, maybe you should just try getting out in nature more and sunning yourself rather than throwing antidepressants at people like straight away.
Another great thing they mentioned on the documentary that we just watched as well was that nature and Mother Earth is for everyone. Everyone can access that, for everyone to use. So we can all use that to cure ourselves and make ourselves feel better. Yeah, you don't need insurance. You don't need money for a private doctor. You don't need to spend loads of money on supplements and pills and all these things, because it's free. Nature is just the best free resource that any of us can use
for so many things. Like I know that when I go out into nature, I feel more inspired. I get more creative. I have my best ideas when I'm on my walks in the woods or along the beach. And I know that because we asked you guys on Facebook and on Instagram, like, how does nature help your mental health? And so many people replied, but they're all very similar answers.
Yeah.
I feel alive again. I feel centered. I feel calm, soothed. I feel like I can cope again. I feel I can breathe. I can't live without it. Like, all these amazing things. Everyone's basically singing from the same hymn sheet. There's got to be some kind of like scientific proof here that this is a genuine kind of treatment for mental health problems.
And even when you're little, I don't know about you, but my mum's always like, oh, go and get some fresh air or go and play outside. Like,
Yeah,
and
get out.
You don't think anything of it, but they do just know, don't they? That's like, it is the simplest and best thing that you can do to make yourself feel instantly better.
I think sometimes it can be so much easier just to plonk a kid on an iPad or in front of the telly, but you know, just going outside. You might just have a little patio or a porch or a balcony, but at least you're in the fresh air.
Yeah.
I think just breathing in that fresh oxygen can do so much for your mental health. It's all linked, isn't it? It's one big cycle, like the yin and yang of the body and the mind. And also, like, I suppose this isn't so much wildlife, but pet therapy, it works. People stroking animals.
Yeah.
And they're more in touch with the earth than any of us, because, like, my cat, he spends so much time outside.
Yeah.
So I feel like he comes outside, lays in the grass for a few hours, absorbs all that brilliant negative ions or negative current or whatever it is, and then he comes inside and then we stroke him, and it's like we're sucking all of that lovely energy out of him. Not to his detriment, because he's just full of love. He's currently flopped out next to me enjoying the heat of my leg. But yeah, so I don't know, what else can we talk about in relation to nature and mental health? I think I just know that all of my happiest memories are ones where I'm outside.
Yeah.
Like, I've climbed volcanoes, like they're some of my best memories, and I've literally spent like 12 hours straight like painfully climbing up a volcano, but just getting all of those, it's almost like you can't see it, but you know it's there, this energy in the air.
Yeah.
Especially, like, I remember when I was in Peru and I went to Machu Picchu, and it's still a really natural site. I mean, it's a site of historic interest, but it's so far up in the mountains and it's so green, and literally I got there, I've never been anywhere like this, and it looked like the hills were vibrating with energy, and I just felt like I was being cured while I was there. It was amazing.
I think you were saying earlier as well that a lot of the times when you felt better is like almost having like loads of technology and being like, so now you work on a laptop all day and like you're always like, you've always got your phone, like we all have, and I definitely feel that as well. So like, even when I spent 3 months in South Africa, I didn't have any Wi-Fi, so I just didn't bother going on my phone, and I wasn't like watching telly or anything. And like, I really did feel better in that way, like after that period. It was just so soothing in a way.
And I think the internet and our phones are addictive. That's been proven by science. Like, it is a thing, and I'm addicted to mine to a certain extent. Other people are more addicted. I wouldn't call myself like a scroller. I don't sit for hours scrolling through Instagram and stuff, but I do just automatically check it, or like my phone won't even buzz or give me a notification, but I just automatically every 5 minutes like go to check my phone. It's really like a bizarre kind of addiction to have, really. It's so subtle. I've done so much research into how blue lights can affect your mental health, because it messes around with your serotonin and melatonin, which is the two chemicals in your body that trigger you to feel tired and awake. It goes much deeper than that. That's a really basic description, but I think when you go to somewhere like that, because I know, like, having travelled around the world and been in different places, like I've been on islands where there's only electricity for 4 hours of the day, and you know, we couldn't afford to be on our phones, and we didn't want to be. Like, we're in Asia, like you're not going to sit on your mobile phone while you're in Asia. It's just too cool. But I know that I was happier then, like I felt better, and I just had a basic little button Nokia.
Yeah.
I didn't get my first I didn't get my first digital phone, like a proper little computer phone. What are they called? Smartphones. I didn't get a smartphone until 2015, so I was a bit late to the game. But I think about it on a daily basis. Like I want to get off Facebook and I want to get a button phone that doesn't do anything but call and text. But then I'm like, oh, our business really relies on Facebook and stuff. I can't really delete those things, but I can be in control of how often I use them.
Yeah, that's the key, I think, is to set yourself boundaries. So if you feel yourself sitting there and pointlessly checking your phone, because I know, especially during lockdown, I feel like I've noticed it more. Just, I don't know if it's because I'm probably like talking to people on my phone more, obviously, because I'm not seeing anyone. But I just think the minute that starts happening, you just need to be like, no, I'm going to put this away. I don't need it. Especially like when you're not working, you can just put it away. Like you don't need to be.
Yeah.
And as well, I think I've been trying, like, on our little woodland walks, just to not even take my phone, because I hate the feeling when you leave the house and you've got that little panic, like, oh, where's my phone?
Yeah.
Like, it feels good now. Like, I can happily go out and I feel okay without it, which is really good.
Yeah, it's definitely a good place to be. I think the problem with smartphones is because it's everything in one place, isn't it? So I'm a passionate photographer. Like I'm no professional, but I enjoy taking photos. And my camera's on my phone. I used to have a set before smartphones. I always used to carry a little handheld camera, like a little compact in my bag. And I feel like I need to just go back to that and just like make more effort to take my digital camera rather than these Wi-Fi kind of saturated phones and stuff, with the internet and stuff. Like with like my Canon, I can just take that with me and take nothing but photos, and it's not connected to Bluetooth, it's not connected to Wi-Fi, it's just a camera.
Just photos,
and then I can look at the photos at a later date and enjoy them. I suppose it prolongs the enjoyment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But when it's all in one place, it's like I've taken the photo, I've shared it, I've talked about it, forgotten about it, let's move on to the next one.
It's almost not special anymore.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm bashing technology loads, but I feel like it's taken the place of a lot of things that we kind of held dear before, and now they've kind of been forgotten.
Yeah.
I just think back to when I was a teenager, and I was very lucky, like all me and my friends, we used to hang out a lot, like in our local park or on the beach, so we were quite often, even if we were up to no good, we were connected to nature. Not necessarily intending to be, but we just were. It's where we could all hang out together because we didn't have to deal with parents and stuff. But we did just generally spend a lot of time outdoors, and I just remember them, even though the teenage years are horrible in so many ways, they also were probably some of my most calm, because I walked loads. Like, I didn't drive everywhere, I had to walk because my mum and dad wouldn't, I lived in a tiny town called Teignmouth, and everything was in walking distance anyway. So my mum and dad would have wasted so much energy, like, and petrol and stuff, by dropping me and picking me up and stuff. So I used to walk everywhere, and I used to spend loads of time on the beach because I lived in a seaside town. And then I remember I passed my driving test when I was 21, I think. And because you can drive everywhere now, it just stops you walking from places.
Yeah.
So since I moved in with Stu a couple of years ago, and I've been closer to town and stuff, I try not to use my car as much either, just so I've got that extra excuse to use my body, which is good for your mental health as well, but also get out in nature more often because I'm not driving everywhere in this little bubble with wheels. So I think we've kind of rambled on about mental health quite a lot, but I'd really love to hear more from you guys. How does nature and wildlife and just being outside help you and your mental health? Because I think it's really important that we kind of talk about this more and spread the word, because we all struggle with mental health at any given point in our lives. Like, it's a roller coaster. And things change and hard things happen and things, but something as simple as going outside can be really soothing. So make sure to comment and let us know how nature affects you in a good way, or maybe it affects you in a bad way. I mean, I would seriously doubt that, but please let us know your thoughts, because we love interacting with you and it's really interesting for us to communicate. And I think we're going to leave it there, so make sure to like and subscribe. and check out our other videos and podcasts. They're all in one place on our YouTube channel. And happy Mental Health Awareness Week. Stay safe, stay sane, spend lots of time in nature, but safely. And we will speak to you in the next podcast.